Here lies the body of the winner of the presidential election of June 1993, adjudged to be the fairest and the freest in the history of the country, but annulled by the then military administration of General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida. In a bid to reclaim his mandate, Chief Moshood Kashimawo Olawale Abiola met an untimely death that rocked the essence of this nation. The emergence of a presidential candidate for the Social Democratic Party was intriguing, as the leadership of the party was torn between two leading lights, Chief MKO Abiola and Shehu Musa Yar'Adua.
Abiola appeared to be, by our assessment, more modest and not too domineering. And he had also a bad experience with NPN. And if we adopt him, he will feel grateful and he will be with us. So we decided in the end that it was Abiola we should support. So we supported Abiola and he became the presidential candidate of the SDP.
And at that time I was the National Financial Secretary of the party. And Kingibe, Baba Gana Kingibe was the chairman of the party. He wants to be a president. Abiola wants to be a president. Atiku wants to be a president. And we went to Jos for 72 hours. The primaries were going on until finally Abiola emerged. With the heart of gold, he picked Kingibe to be his running mate. And what happened?
Chief MKO Abiola's selection as a presidential candidate of the Social Democratic Party for the 1993 presidential election pitched him against his opponent, Alhaji Bashir Tofa of the National Republican Convention. He knew what he wanted and didn't mince words whenever he had the opportunity to discuss his agenda of hope and steering the country to the path of prosperity after so many years of military dictatorship.
Why are we where we are? We are where we are because government has left undone what it should have done and has kept doing what it has no business doing. Government has no business running business.
Armed with his manifestos, he journeyed the length and breadth of the country with his campaign trail, assuring Nigerians of his willingness to serve for the good of the fatherland. He smelt victory and was very optimistic he will get the overwhelming support of the people.
We are going to win in 24 states of the Republic, easily.
This compound used to host the Hope 93 office, a place that played a very strategic role in the emergence of Chief MKO Abiola as a flag bearer of the Social Democratic Party and the eventual winner of the 1993 election. The building have all gone down and now houses a school. The MKO's movement was massive, and like a tide, it drowned the voices of his opponent. And just as June the 12th approached, he concluded his campaigns with an absolute trust that the military under General Ibrahim Babangida would successfully deliver on its transition program, which had taken longer than expected.
Saturday, June 12, 1993, a day Nigerians will troop out in their millions to vote for a presidential candidate.
With voting over, Nigerians eagerly awaited the declaration of the result for an election described by many as the freest and fairest in the history of the country.
We had the results. Dr. Baikola Sokosi I saw all the results, and we knew that MKO won the election.
But that was a wish that never made it to the light, as the then military head of state found it necessary to throw the baby and the bathwater away, citing some irregularities.
It is true that the presidential election was generally seen to be free, fair, and peaceful. However, there was, in fact, a huge array of election malpractices virtually in all the states of the Federation before the actual voting began.
It's a matter of a misunderstanding. He was not accurately informed.
Something ominous had just happened. Like a bad dream, a dark cloud loomed over MKO's date with his mandate. He, however, kept his composure despite what had befallen him. He also wanted Nigerians to put themselves together and remain calm in the light of the provocation that stared them in the face.
I'm just asking that in the light of the popular mandate of the Nigerian people, as a Nigerian too, and as a leader of Nigeria, he should think again.
This is where he used to have all his family meetings, even business meetings.
Jamiu Abiola is a son of the late Moshood and Kudirat Abiola, a multilingual translator and a writer of 2 books on June 12. He takes us through the experience at home when this happened.
In those days, after the election was annulled, before he's a very agile man, he moves around, he's very active. Even if he sees that you are down, he tries to bring you up emotionally. But this time around, you could be with him and his mind could be elsewhere. Just like that, and and he seems like he had too many things on his mind and he was becoming very restless. Sometimes you can even see him, looking up in the ceiling. He was just very depressed because he had spent a fortune, and apart from that, he had actually made a tremendous effort.
While MKO kept faith with the relationship he had built over time with IBB, as the head of state was fondly called, the streets could not take it. The people felt betrayed and trodden underfoot. And what followed was a chain of reactions that led to massive protests across the country.
The Third Mainland Bridge, always a delight to drive here, especially when there is no traffic. Drivers find it a place to express their freedom on the wheels. But not many realize that here was a center of the protests that greeted the annulment of the 1993 election. Channels Television was always at the forefront. And take a look at this visual.
War chants from the protesters brought them face to face with the barrels and sound of gunshots.
Nigerian army had killed so many protesters on the streets of Lagos, how we decided to call a 3-day stay-at-home strike, or ville morte as they call it in French, that is a dead city. I think those were interesting times, even though I stayed in my house with my neighbors and everybody was very much geared up to observe the strike and people were buying in supplies and so on. But I also remember during that period being, I lived at Yaba in those days and I used to pass Kpanti Street Police Station. And I was going home from somewhere and I saw my executive director, Abdul Oro, at the, at the Kpanti Street Police Station, and he signaled to me, so I went up to see what's happening. And they promptly, then I said, okay, well, see you. And they said, no, madam, you can't go. You have to stay with us. And so I had to stay. Eventually they released us. But I remember that my mother arrived all the way from Okoba at that time with a suitcase containing night dress and all sorts of things that she thought that I might need because she had got the message that the police were to detain me.
Civil society groups, individuals all put up a resistance which took varying dimensions and intensity when it became obvious that the democratic flight had crash-landed and that the country was sliding down the trenches. It was rough and tough on the streets as the police and military personnel, armed to the teeth, rolled out their tanks and armored vehicles ready to repel and quell any civil uprising.
When I suffered deprivation, it wasn't threatening. I was expecting it. I was expecting that I could be killed in the middle of the revolution, because most revolutionaries don't survive. 50-50, you can die and you survive. Mandela was one of the lucky ones, even though he suffered so much. But his cell is not like the type of cell I was placed. And I made it clear to him when I met him after prison. And that's why he made me one of the prisoners of conscience in the world. I told him, I said, look, the Madiba, if you spent 4 years in a Nigerian prison, where I said you will die, not where you were looking television and doing a lot of exams and winning degrees when you were in Robben Island. No, not Burma, not Gashua prison.
In the heat of the struggle, General Ibrahim Babangida stepped aside, paving way for an interim government headed by a British-trained Nigerian lawyer, industrialist, politician, Chief Ernest Shonekan, on the 26th of August, 1993. Series of litigations soon followed, which attracted thousands of Nigerians clamoring for the actualization of the June 12 mandate.
It is now becoming increasingly clear that the Shonekan surrogate regime can no longer pretend to be democratic in any sense.
Chief Ernest Shonekan's tenure was, however, short-lived after it was declared illegitimate by Justice Dolapo Akinsoya of the Lagos High Court and subsequently sacked on the 17th of November 1993 by General Sani Abacha, who took over the mantle of leadership.
The following decisions come into immediate effect. The interim national government is hereby dissolved.
Most civil groups within and outside the country, in spite of the clampdown that followed, forged a common alliance against military dictatorship. They deployed all they could to put up a formidable opposition against the government of the day. It was a task they must accomplish. Governor Kayode Fayemi of Ekiti State shares a story on the journey that led to the birth of Freedom Radio that traumatized the then military administration.
It was when I was coming to the West African coast, let me put it that way, with the transmitters, and the flight, instead of landing in Cotonou, Benin Republic, decided to land first in Lagos before going to Cotonou. And remember, this was General Abacha's heydays, and here was this guy who was already declared a persona non grata in Nigeria, carrying transmitters of an illegal pirate radio. It's not in the days when you just have FM radios dotting everywhere now, so people may not be able to contextualize what one is saying. But if you recall that at the time, there was no, maybe one private commercial television station, which was Channels. In fact, Channel was in its infancy. I think Channel had just gotten its license in 1994, and I was talking about 1995. That's when this incident occurred. So the 40 minutes spent on the tarmac in Murtala Mohammed Airport was probably the longest period of my life, because anything could have happened. I could have been discovered. I could have been arrested, and it would have been history.
It was obvious General Sani Abacha was not keen on revalidating the June 12 mandate, as he, on assumption of office, appointed key actors of the June 12 struggle into his administration in an attempt to water down the agitation to actualize the mandate. MKO, who had left the country on exile, saw this as a betrayal and as such returned home to reclaim his mandate. He was greeted by a mammoth crowd upon his return to the country. This and more energized him, and the plan to have him declare himself as president got underway.
It was in that regard that we now look for an appropriate venue where the declaration could be done. The choice of Ekpete Edo became very choicy, very significant, because that place remained the center of the natives before the British invaders came to disturb our peace. I can tell you that a lot of work had to be done at the venue before the place could be made habitable and usable for the declaration. Another thing that we did successfully was to create a decoy for the security. We prepared a place for them in Surulere. So we diverted their attention. And they had they virtually took over the entire road network around that place. I can tell you the principal people who were used to coordinate. It was under the leadership of the late Dr. Wahab Dosumu, a native homeboy who knew the place very well.
Ekpete Edo is a historical part of Lagos Island, and of course has also become a very significant part of the June 12th struggle after Chief MKO Abiola on the 11th of June 1994 made his presidential declaration here in this building.
So he came with a suit, complete suit with tie. We met him at Wadi de Sunon Street through Gambari, then to this place. By then, this place was not built by them. It was just a Tata clubhouse. He entered, we asked him to change, he changed to full Regalia native. Then he started, by the time he was making his statements, I have moved backward for the people who are concerned to even participate in that affairs. So within 15 or 20 minutes now, he did what he wanted. And when we are hearing the rumor that police are coming, detectives are coming, they easily disperse everybody, and within 20-30 minutes, everybody went away.
In actual fact, we were not emphasizing the mammoth crowd that we met here on that very day. How the people got to know that it's going to come up that way, it's still a surprise to me as a person. But there are some people that we informed. Because when we first got here, what we do is to smuggle him into the cool room of this clubhouse. And then when everybody had gathered, then we now brought him in.
They, however, wish Ekpete Edo was given more attention. The option of declaring himself president in Ekpete Edo, Lagos, was the beginning of his sojourn to detention, as he was declared wanted and was accused of treason and arrested on the orders of the head of state, General Sani Abacha, who took him into custody.
I told them and let them know that MKO is in ill health. If anything should happen to him, I doubt it very much if the whole of Nigerian military troop will be able to contain the outcry.
While the dream of actualizing the June 12 election faded, and of course opposition against the then General Sani Abacha's administration waned with the incarceration of MKO Abiola and of course some opposition leaders, one woman kept the fight alive. His wife, Alhaja Kudirat Abiola, she mobilized all she could to ensure the struggle was alive. However, on the 4th of June 1996, while the world marked the anniversary of the infamous Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing, China, she had a date with her assailant's bullets somewhere here, where she died and was buried in a home where she lived and held countless of meetings.
That day, we have 4 appointments, and I had a few documents to prepare. So I drove with her in the car, but with the understanding that I would drop off. There were a lot of things I had to do. Some I had to typeset, some I had to read through. So it was with her. But that day, she was really angry that how can such a thing happen in Nigeria? And she said that we were always trailing her. I told Elijah, no, your name is not even on the list of those who will be killed. I can be killed. That has happened several times. So I sat with her in the vehicle. We had 4 appointments. 3, 4, 5, 6. There's someone now. And at times we run, neck to neck. So I dropped off. I had this phone that started with 090. It wasn't quite 4 minutes because I was time conscious. All the things we needed to do. The phone rang. And the voice I heard that Kudi has been shot.
It was after the last attempt to get her to abandon the mandate failed. Then they now became more aggressive. They arrested her, and she was given bail the following day. She spent, I think, a night in jail. It was the following week that was when people were sent to kill her.
Of the several names often mentioned in the course of the June 12th struggle, and of course the agitation against military dictatorship, one man stands out tall. A senior advocate of Nigeria, legal luminary, Chief Gani Fawehinmi. His chamber was an engine room to the struggle. He not only provided legal support, he was also very conspicuous in the battle arena.
On the 60th birthday of Chief MKO Abiola, while he was still in detention and his residence almost deserted, a celebration which later turned into a solidarity rally for June 12 took place at Chief Gani Fawehinmi's residence.
Gani was like an encyclopedia of positive activism in Nigeria. Gani can give you any information at the tip of his fingers. He was deeply committed, unassuming, detailed, and he had that milk of kindness flowing in him. No wonder the June 12 struggle. From time to time, he would tell MK Abiola, you can never give up the mandate.
While it seemed there was hope at last for Chief MKO Abiola after the sudden death of General Sani Abacha in June 1998, the news of MKO's sudden demise filtered into town. With the death of MKO Abiola, the General Abdulsalami Abubakar's administration set the stage for a transition to civil rule, which brought Chief Olusegun Obasanjo to power on May 29, 1999.
I, Olusegun Obasanjo.
While many thought it was time to honor the winner of the June 12 election and to recognize that day as Democracy Day in the country, it remained a wish that never manifested. Subsequent administrations of President Umar Musa Yar'Adua and Dr. Goodluck Ebele Jonathan appeared not to have fancied the notion of recognizing June the 12th as Democracy Day, as they were stuck on to May the 29th. However, in June 2018, what appeared like a ray of hope sprouted from the least likely source.
Federal government recognition of June 12 as National Democracy Day.
As the President Muhammadu Buhari's administration thought it wise to honor Chief MKO Abiola by conferring on him the Grand Commander of the Federal Republic and also recognizing June the 12th as Democracy Day.
It was a beautiful thing. Huh? It was a beautiful thing. Even we took it with equanimity, because we've been clamoring for it, that it was the right thing to do, that he had done so. We give him credit for it. And so we reject all the flimsy puerile accusations of his opponent in that regard, that he did it for political reason. And why not?
Initially, when it was just June 12th, we felt a little slighted because my mother was, according to us, left out. But recently, I think it was like a couple of weeks ago, we got a letter that she's going to be included in the Hall of Fame as the martyr for Nigerian democracy. And this is a federal government, announcement, and she's officially recognized as the martyr of democracy, which means a lot to us, 7 children, that we felt that she had been left out from the honors. Now it's now complete, and we're happy and grateful for that.
It's been 26 years of this struggle. So many waters have passed under the bridge, leaving in its trail so many lessons and regrets.
Democratization is work in progress. It is a process, it's not an event. There are Nigerians now who are not happy with the state of our democracy, but they must never let the perfect become the enemy of the good. It is when we continue to struggle that we can improve our situation.
I don't think that there's anything to regret except for the fact that people died because a military dictatorship did not want to allow the Nigerian people to embark on the democratic journey which we needed to embark upon so that we can progress and have government for the people rather than government for the many.
While the nation celebrates the maiden edition of June 12 as Democracy Day, we all must reflect on the journey and remember those incarcerated, the blood spilled, tears shed, and lives lost on the altar of the struggle. They are the silent heroes who deserve our accolades. They are the soil from which this democracy sprouts. May their labor never be in vain.